Hey guys, working on the 2021 Ram 1500. Happens to be a Laramie Edition crew cab, short box. Going to be installing the Airlift Easy Mount wireless compressor system. Mount, or the Airlift compressor that I'm mounting, their new Easy Mount model, which is wireless. I got it on Amazon for about $395, so it's a little bit pricey, but you can use this remote control. No wires go to the cab, so it's a pretty simple installation. It's got a manifold and wiring harness goes in here. There's a ground wire. This red wire will hook up to the harness later on. And this is the air inlet, I believe. And this is where our filter will be hooked up to the inlet. And the outlet's kind of hidden down here underneath. So here's the rest of the kit. The remote controller, directions. This is an air filter we'll install later with a couple extra elements. Big U-bolt will go around the frame so you don't have to drill any holes. I didn't like the way it fit on my particular truck, so I decided not to use that. A bunch of zip ties, T-fittings for the airlines, wiring harness, extra tubing, T-fittings and so forth, even a fuse provided. Ram's on the lift. I know a lot of you guys don't have a lift. I'm pretty fortunate. And the best mounting position under the passenger side that I found is right up here in front of this square cross member. There's a large hole that you can use for one bolt, and come around here. I drilled a 1/4-inch hole here. That was probably the hardest part of the installation because these new frames are hydroformed steel, very hard. So you got to be patient, use smaller bits, work up to a 1/4-inch bit. So after I drilled the 1/4-inch hole, I used one of their self-tapping bolts, and it's pretty hard to get in there. I used a little machinist oil, and the threads on this first one are a little bit galled, so the kit comes with two, so I'm going to use the good one to put it up and toss this one away. What I did for my install is the hole marked with the silver marker, I enlarged to a 1/2-inch hole, and that's going to go through the larger hole on the frame. When I mocked it up, this corner of the frame hits the rear seat storage containers. They're plastic. They stick down below the body, and if I just nip this off, it'll go right in. There's nothing underneath it, no reason I have to have it, so I'm going to cut that off and probably throw a little black paint on there for rust prevention. So I just hit this with my cut-off wheel, and I'll go throw a little paint on it, and we'll put it up on the frame. Here you can see the 1/2-inch bolt. And that's the red wire we'll hook up later. Here's the self-tapping bolt. I chose the inside hole to give me more room by the plastic underfoot storage container. If I get back here, I think you can see where the bracket would have hit that if I hadn't cut that corner off up in there. Hard to see, but that little corners they cut off. So if we get back, that's the underfoot storage, passenger side. And here's our compressor mount. The remote air intake filter. They suggest drilling a 3/8 hole in the frame, and you could snap it in there, which would be fine. It's really a hard frame to drill into, so I may zip tie it up, we'll see what works, but first thing is we're gonna put this fitting on. Hand tight, they say, no thread sealant, and that's where the tubing will hook up to the compressor inlet. Instructions are not very good. It came with these two elements, it says to replace periodically, which they don't say what that is, but so I kind of wondered, well, how do I get to those? And I opened up the back and there's the filter that's provided with it. But they don't tell you anywhere. This cover has to be pried off. It's pretty tight. I used a small screwdriver and popped it. But just to let you know, there's little, 3 little ticks inside. See if I can set this down and show you. Little triangular tick. 3 of them. And then inside is this recess on only one side. And actually, as I say that, there are 3 of those locking tabs on the housing here. Not 1, 3. So if we line it up, so I lined it up here, and I just squeeze it, and it snaps down. Would have been nice if they would have explained that to a guy. I wanted to know that before I install it, so when I go to change it, how hard is that going to be to pop off with it mounted to the frame? So, locations for the air filter I wasn't really happy with. Have to be able to pop that off someday, so I had this mocked up, and if I use this hole and drill it out to 3/8, this will pop in and should work pretty well. The hose is right underneath that, which isn't good, so to be safe, I'm gonna unbolt this and flop the hose bracket around the other way to get the hose inboard, which should be fine. We'll see. Hose clamp to the inside, which is fine, and then drilled out that. It's easier to drill out a hole that's already started, of course, so I like that. I don't know, kind of makes it nice to be all part of the unit, and it's snapped in there really tight, so I think when it's ready to change, I can get from underneath and pop that off. So we'll see how that looks in the truck. So here it is, mounted up again. See the air filter's up there, it clears the body. Gives me decent access from back here to reach up and pop that out. And then from the front, I think you can see the hose just kisses the plastic storage bin, but routes up to the front of the filter. The red wire from the compressor has a spade connector. I don't know why, because the first thing they do is tell you to cut that off and use a crimp connector they provide. I'm not a big fan of crimp connectors. I'm gonna cut this and solder it. It'll clip into the compressor, and it's got a red wire there that is going to connect to this red wire. So I'll go ahead and solder this and heat shrink it and get back later. So the harness has a slide-in locking tab that unfortunately they designed it to go on the inside. Once you connect it, you won't be able to see it. So you're gonna have to remember that when you go to take this out. So not a big deal, but you can't see the red sliding tab. It's on the inside. So if you ever go to pull that out, you may fight it, but it's a nice locking tab. So I'm routing the harness on top of the frame, as close as I can get to the top on this side. The inside of this frame has the exhaust system, so I want to stay away from that. So as I came forward, I just went above that storage unit, over the body mounts, found some handy holes in the frame. Going forward, and came out by the inner fender here, and I'm going up from the inner fender, see where I can route it in the engine compartment. Side of the engine compartment, and the wires came through the inner fender up here. I zipped them up here, and it's pretty cool. I hope you can see this. There's a wiring harness holder all the way in the back of the engine compartment, and there's clips that hold it in, and if you gently pry that up with a screwdriver, it pops it open, and I think that's going to be pretty nice to have that hidden all the way across the engine bay. So I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about that that wire routing container back there. I've got them routed all the way through. Take your time, pop the clips off. When you get around the brake reservoir, it's got a little curve to it. It gets a little tricky. If you use some screwdrivers carefully, don't damage the wire. It'll go in. It takes a little coaxing right about there. But now I've got them all coming out here, which is right by the battery. So obviously I can hook up the positive and negative to the battery. The pink wire, they say, should be provided with an ignition on source, which they say is optional. So I don't really know why, but I'm gonna bundle that wire up and save it in case I decide to install it that way. But for now, I'll finish this up. So pretty much buttoned up here. I got the pink wire wrapped up, figure out what to do with that. Negative terminal, positive terminal, and the fuse holder. I zip tied it to my other wiring. Didn't put the fuse in yet. Some of you may wonder what this other wiring is. That's a circuit breaker, 20 amp for my trailer jack. I have a car hauler trailer. I have a power jack, so I need to provide wire to the back of the vehicle here. So I have a couple wires hooked up here, so I had to notch out my positive terminal cover, but if you do that, it'll still snap to place and good to go. Anyway, not too bad of a job. Take some time, and appreciate your comments. Thank you. So my airbags came about 2 days after the compressor, so I installed them according to the manufacturer's instructions, which was way easier than my 2014 Ram, I have to say. They actually have you drop the springs. The instructions are pretty good, but let me just show you a few tips that I learned along the way. So the directions tell you to mark the spring and the spring perch, top and bottom. I can't show you the top because I have my fender liners back in, but the thing they don't mention is at the top spring perch, the upper spring perch goes through the mount in the body and has a little nipple that sticks up through that hole, and that has to align properly. So make sure you do that. When I dropped this on my lift with the wheels on, I have them off now. The left side, driver's side, I could not pull the spring out. So I put a small bottle jack between the axle and the bump stop with a little piece of wood here to spread it open a little bit farther, and then this pulled right out. For some reason, the passenger side pulled out easily. So anyway, airbags are in. I routed the lines over to the compressor. So I routed the lines over to the rear of the compressor mount and used the T-fitting. And this one that goes to the compressor, because the fitting is below the manifold here, I have a 90-degree fitting coming because I wanted to come out and go immediately rearward. I didn't want to bend the hose that far, so I haven't hooked this up yet, but I'll hook this up when I get that 90-degree fitting, maybe take a quick video of that. So there you have it, all done. 90-degree fitting here, coming out and directing the tube backwards, I think is a little bit neater, and I zip tied it up, tried to keep it up out of harm's way, so that should do it.